So after playing Gotham Knights, I must say that I'm neither disappointed or amazed. The game is serviceable, but isn't anything spectacular. I really feel like this needs a little talking to. Anyway, starting off with the story, cast of this game is mediocre at best. It's not very good. Nothing about the story blew me away, to be fair. I want to get something off my chest before I thing in the story, and this is to do with the cast a little bit as well, is that Batman and Bruce, those two names, Bruce or Batman, are mentioned about 59 times in this entire game during one single cutscene. His name never leaves anyone's mouth. I understand he's a big part of the story, if not the main part of the story, even though he's non-playable and stuff. He's still probably the main story aspect, or at least the most important. I understand, like, Batman is by far the most important character. He's more important than any other four you play as, or anyone besides that. So that's Alfred, Lucius, all those people. He's just by far the most important, more important than any villain, anyone you play as. He's just by far the most important to the story, and that's fine in a sense. But then it gets to the point where they mention his name too much. Like there's a bunch of scenes. There'll be a scene where Red Hood is upset and he ends up hugging Alfred and all that sort of stuff. But they mention Batman or Bruce Wayne about 5 times, and then the whole thing is about, oh, don't be sad, because Batman wouldn't be sad. If they just use his name, either Batman or Bruce, in like not even, doesn't even have to be like half the cutscenes, like 1 in every 2 cutscenes, it'd be a lot less thing. I swear there's not a single main cutscene where he's not mentioned. There's probably like 3 in the entire game, in all fairness, but there's probably like over 100 cutscenes in the game, and there's like maybe 3 where he's not mentioned, and even then I'm not even sure if that's correct. The villains, going on to the cast bit, the villains are crap. I thought the villains were. It was kind of cool. I won't say what villains, but some of the villains were kind of cool. But by cool I mean, well, there was only one, to be fair, that I found cool, and it was only because of a certain boss fight. The second stage or part of their boss fight, I kind of liked, because it was a bit more unique than the rest. But even that wasn't that good. But the rest of them were super underwhelming. I mean, the only one I can say is Mr. Freeze, because he was in all the bloody gameplay shit before the game even came out, and he was crap. He was actually the worst out of all of them, I think. I really didn't like him. But there was all these characters, even the main antagonists, or the main antagonists in plural, just uninteresting. There was a little plot twist at one point I thought I really didn't care much about. It was, oh cool, that happened, oh bye, wow. And yes, I didn't expect it, but it wasn't I didn't expect it. It was like oh okay, cool. There's also a lack of villains. I feel like obviously it's going to be compared to Arkham Knights, but even like the Arkham series in general, and that's just something you can't get away from. Like, that's going to happen for good reason as well. But compared to those games, and just any game in general, like, it has any Batman game in general, it has such a lackluster rogue of villains, or selection of villains. It's almost embarrassing. It's so lackluster, and it would be fine if the villains they showed were interesting, were cool, were awesome. But in my eyes, none of them were. They were just the best villain, which I was saying about earlier with the boss fights, is still average at best. Like, he's not that good, maybe even slightly below average. None of the villains are good, and some of the main ones are absolutely and the main ones, and some of the side ones that are still kind of big ones in the Batman universe kind of thing, they're all boring. None of them are interesting. I never once, when I was chasing down a villain, or one of these main villains, or in the final boss fight of the game, or whatever, was I interested in how me defeating them would proceed the story, or interested in them as a character, in their witty remarks and all this sort of stuff. Nothing about them just interested me. Nothing about them and the story interested me, and the story is also just pretty poop. Even if you take away the fact that Batman's mentioned 24/7 and you can't get away from it, which is fair enough, right? Even if you take what I just said there about the Batman out of the equation, the story, I feel, is still unbelievably bad. It's very, very poor, and when I get into spoilers, you'll understand why. But I feel like the story is very, 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 not even underwhelming. It's just, for the price this game costs and the characters and story you get, I feel like if you're somebody who's looking for story, this game is the biggest rip-off you will ever be able to possibly purchase. It is so, because most shit story games will be crappy horror games that are sometimes on offer for pennies, so But this game, over full price, I'd say, but it's you know, a hugely expensive game. Side missions are absolutely fine. They're average. They're I say absolutely fine. Like I said, the villains in the side missions are boring as hell, but the actual side missions themselves are fine compared to the other Arkham games. Or just the Arkham games in general. It's night and day. They're nowhere near as good, but they're passable. You know, the main story is what I'm more annoyed about being bad, but the actual story, the actual side missions, sorry, is fine. Like they're passable. If the story was good, like a decent story, the side missions would be easily more than acceptable, right? I think the reason the side missions look worse than they are is because the story's so bad. Yeah, lack of villains that are shit. And it's not like they didn't have good named villains. Like the villains that they showed, well, they had like big stature, like they're well known. They were just boring. I don't know whether it was the voices of them, the script of them. It's probably a bit of all. I don't know. They were just boring villains and they were crap, and none of them interested me. And Mr. Freeze particularly was just abysmal. He was like the worst of the worst. He was just crap. Nothing he did, I don't know. His thugs were more interesting than him himself. Like, I genuinely thought the story, the characters, crap. Gameplay is fine. Still not as good as Arkham. Gonna compare it to that again. But in general, it's probably the best part of the game. The animations, there's not many animations, so when you do like a cool, like a takedown animation, or when you're like punching or doing all this stuff, there's like at most 2 animations for like everything. And like when you interrogate someone, there's only 1 animation for that. And so or like when you silent take down someone, there's like 2 animations, maybe 3. There's not enough animations, so it gets stale really quickly. Like looking, like first of all, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. But then after like 2 or 3 hours of play, and you're like, and it is like a 14-hour game or something. Well, like 10-hour game or something. I don't know. But like you will eventually start getting bored of how it looks. But in general, it's not bad. It's not abysmal. It's easy serviceable. Probably the best part of the game. There's certain parts I absolutely despise. Like with Batgirl, you can unlock her wingsuit. Like you can unlock like the glide with her. But it's abysmal. Like compared, like I'm not even going to compare it. Like even if we're taking out the fact that most people compare it to like Batman in Arkham Knight or something, or whatever. And that's a game that came out in like 2015. Even taking aside that comparison and just comparing it on its own, it's still abysmal. Her gliding mechanic is crap. It's so bad. It's so janky. Like it's like it almost gets to the point, if not straight gets to the point, where you just don't want to use it, and you would rather just either use the bike, which isn't that good in and of itself compared to like a Batmobile or something else in a different game, or like you have to like grapple on things constantly, like grapple to one building, then grapple to another building, then grapple to another, and it just becomes boring. Like it's really boring. Like even just not comparing it to any other game, just on its own, it's just like if you had never played any other Batman game or any other like game that's got similar traversal or tries to do similar traversal or whatever, and you have to play this game and unlock I think it's the knighthood challenges, get her cape, her gliding ability. It's so, I don't know if any other character has gliding abilities. I've only done knighthood for her, but my god, like it's so like they can nosedive and they can do all that stuff, but it just feels so janky. It's so slow. I feel like the movement in this is really slow, right? Like the bike is maybe is slightly less than like double the speed of one of the cars on the road, if not double the speed. Like it's very slow, and then it feels very slow. At least it doesn't feel fast. And there's no like boost or anything like that to make it go faster. And then there's the grapple, and even the cape when you're gliding is quite slow. And I feel like the reason that is maybe because they don't want you to get around the world too quickly. Maybe, I'm not sure. But the traversal in this game it's fine. It's serviceable. But compared to games, like even games W Montreal have contributed to or done, is bad in and of itself, right? So it's just, even compared to some of their own works, it's bad. So I just feel like how they've messed up. It's not. They've not messed it up. That's an over-exaggeration. It's not bad. Like it's not bad traversal. It's just traversal that's annoying or boring, and it's, it feels repetitive over a period of time. The combat's fine. Like I said, the animations could have been done with a bit more, but in general, it's fine. It's serviceable, and it doesn't feel super unfair. Like when someone goes for a punch, usually you know when to dodge and stuff if you're good enough. I'm not, but like it doesn't feel like it's unfair. It feels like it's fair enough. It's, whether you're on easy, normal, hard, whatever. Like it just the combat's fine. There's nothing really more to say on the combat. Like, it's literally, besides the animations, which were a bit lackluster at best, the combat in general is fine. The boss fights, most of them, well, not most of them are average. There's about 2 that I absolutely despised because they were just bullet sponges, and there was like maybe 1 that I liked, but it wasn't even like, they weren't even like fisticuffing it, so it was a bit of a different one. The car design, the car models, the visuals, right? The car models look utterly atrocious. They look so unbelievably bad, right? Considering this game came out literally like not even like a week ago at the time of me doing this, is literally abysmal. Like, the models are just crap of the cars. They literally look like they look worse than a Hot Wheel. Like, it's terrible. The NPCs and the world just feels super dead. Like, nothing's alive in the world. It feels boring. They spout the same lines over and over again, so you can't even walk around the city. Like, they'll be like, "Yo, go Batgirl, you're my favorite," and then 5 seconds later, you'll see another NPC that goes, "Yo, Batgirl, you're my favorite." And there was actually some times where they would literally just cross-pollinate, like, the same lines, 2 different NPCs, because there's no variety in the dialogue, it was just boring. The world felt dead. I genuinely, like, they should have just done what the Arkham games did and just have it in a city that's like not got civilians in, or like is abandoned or something like that, because this actually feels less alive than those cities, and those cities are meant to be abandoned. It's embarrassing how dead this city looks compared to like Spider-Man PS4 or PS5, if you want to call it that now, Miles Morales or whatever, but like Spider-Man on the PS4 originally, like in 2018 or whatever, comparing it to that, or was it 2017, I don't know. Like, my god, night and day, or what? The design of Gotham is fine. There's nothing really to say. It's like, it's fine. It's just one of the better parts of the game, a bit like the combat as well, but it's still only average. Like, it's fine. It's easily passable. Not bad at all, but the graphics, the actual graphics as well, they were just poor. Like, they were fine. It's serviceable, but considering, like I said, if you're taking into account the games that came before it and the games that themselves have worked on, it's lackluster. Because, correct me if I could be completely wrong here, I'm pretty sure they worked on Arkham Origins, didn't they? Did they make that game, or did they not make that game? But if they did, I'm pretty sure they did. Then then it's a downgrade, because, like, it might be slightly, my voice, it might be slightly better than Arkham Origins, maybe. I've never actually played Arkham Origins. Is the only Arkham game I've not played, but from what I've seen online about Arkham Origins and stuff, it may be slightly better than that, but slightly. Like, it's not, like, it's a bit of a, maybe not downgrade in a literal term, but it's like, in that many years you feel like they would have done something more. But hey, and Arkham Origins, from what I've seen, I would probably enjoy that game a lot more, right? It's probably worse than that story-wise as well, but like I said, Arkham Origins is the only Arkham game I've not played. The price of this game is utterly abysmal, like, considering it's full, like, too much. It's not, I wouldn't even call this full price, I'd call this over full price. It's much more than the Callisto Protocol is to pre-order. It's much more than Resident Evil 4 is to pre-order. It's crazy. I think it's about as much as, like, the new Call of Duty game. And even though I don't play Call of Duties, like, you probably get more out of Call of Duty than you do Gotham fucking Knights. Quickly getting the Arkham Knight comparison out of the way, right? Or just Arkham games in general out of the way. If we're comparing this to the Arkham games, which I've been doing this entire time, but, like, you cannot help it. People who say, oh, you should compare it as its own thing. Yes, you should, but at the same time, you've got to compare it to others, right? If GTA 5 has a terrible story, you won't just compare it to stories in other GTA games. You will compare it to stories just in general in gaming, won't you, right? And that's what I'm doing here, right? I'm comparing it to a game that's in the set in the Batman universe, is a Batman game that you just can't get away from. So it's not like you cannot compare them. People who say you shouldn't compare them, like, I don't necessarily think they're wrong, but they're definitely not right either. They have a point, but you also can easily compare them. You can compare pretty much anything, but these two are similar. So, but comparing them to the Arkham games, Arkham Knights is 10 times better. Arkham Knight's actually my favourite one. Arkham City is a lot better, and even Arkham Asylum that came out in like 2009. If Arkham Asylum that came out in 2009 came out now, not taking into account that it came out in 2009, so like it has the same graphics and everything, it would still be better than Gotham Knights. Like, even if Arkham Asylum came out now, and we're not like upgrading the graphics or anything, like making it a 2022 game, if it came out how it is now, does that make sense? So it came out with the same graphics of 2009 and everything out now, it would still be better than Gotham Knights. I would still enjoy that game a lot more than Gotham Knights. So it's just a bad, like, this is a bad game. I have no interest in seeing Gotham Knights' universe be expanded upon. No interest whatsoever. If this Gotham Knights never gets a sequel or a prequel or anything ever, I will not care, and I would actually be happy. I don't want W. Marshall to continue this thing. I will not buy a sequel. I will not buy it unless it looks amazing, right? Unless it can drag me in, which it probably will, because I somehow was dragged into buying Gotham Knights in the first place, even though I didn't think it looked particularly good. But Gotham Knights 2 or a sequel or a prequel or whatever, I have no interest in. If this was an Arkham game, it would be by far the worst, because they're not taking into account Arkham Origins, because I've not played that one. But compared to the other three, like, it's not even close. Like, even the worst Arkham game, which I think is like Arkham Asylum, is still good. Yet this game is actually, like, less than average. Honestly, this game, 3 out of 10. It's not very good. It's not abysmal. It's definitely serviceable. I think something that goes against it is the price. Like, the price of the game. If this game was half the price, then it might went up a rating or 2. Like, genuinely, it should have been half the price, at least, if not lower. Like, it was such a rip-off, this game. But even if we're not taking into account the price, because of the, how expensive games are now, but you've got to take it into account to an extent, right? But even if you're not somehow taking that into account, this game is still at best like a 4 or 5, but I'm giving it a 3. It's just not very good. It's got serviceable aspects, like the combat's fine, and the graphics are fine to an extent. But overall, the game's just bad. It feels rushed, even though it probably wasn't rushed. They probably got out when they wanted to get out, and it was just a bad-made game, or poorly made game rather. It feels like it was rushed. It feels like a game that, it feels like Cyberpunk did when it first came out, right? It feels like that, or at least I think so. I didn't play Cyberpunk when it first came out, but I assume it feels like that. But the difference is Cyberpunk was delayed constantly, and I think during COVID and stuff, and it had reasons to not be. It came out in like an unfinished state kind of thing, or unpolished state. Whereas Gotham Knights, I've not heard any news on that. All I've heard is the game's out. I don't know if it's been delayed or if it's come out unpolished. I don't know, but that's how it feels. It feels like an unpolished game. Yeah, 3 out of 10. Wouldn't recommend. Game's crap.